Good afternoon. On today's Angry Alien Bulletin, in some of my previous episodes, we've been discussing the possibility of stellar engines. In other words, interstellar civilizations that are capable of transporting their entire solar system, or perhaps even several solar systems, from one location to another via mammoth planet-sized engines that are capable of driving an entire solar system to a speed necessary to escape the galaxy altogether. But the question remains, even if fantastically advanced civilizations are capable of building something like this, why would they want to escape the galaxy at all? Even the fastest hypervelocity stars that we observed are going to take tens, if not hundreds of millions of years to reach the nearest galaxy, or any galaxy in our local group. So that's just an enormous time invested and an enormous amount of resources and effort invested just to go from one galaxy to another. Why all the effort? Well, as we have seen in previous episodes, we have briefly discussed the eventual possibility, or at least it seems very likely, that the Andromeda and Milky Way galaxies are going to merge into a giant mega galaxy that we are going to call Milkomeda. But even though this is going to be a bit of a chaotic event, is it really serious enough to cause immensely advanced civilizations to want to flee? Well, as we're going to examine in this episode, not only is there a compelling reason to get away from two merging galaxies, there's also a lot of evidence to suggest that there may be very advanced civilizations who are trying to do that very thing. All of this and more coming at you on The Angry Astronaut right now. The Milky Way galaxy is a mammoth collection of stars so huge that it defies our powers of comprehension. It's 100,000 light years across. So, in the entire time that human civilization has been in existence, the light from our planet has crossed approximately 5% of the disk of our galaxy, the entire recorded history of humanity. And yet, anybody with a telescope in this galaxy that has the power to observe us would only have known about it if they were within that region of space, about 5% of the entire galaxy. Otherwise, they would be blissfully unaware of the existence of any civilization on our planet, no matter how primitive. As far as 95% of the galaxy is concerned, there is no type of civilization on the Earth whatsoever, only primitive species and a bipedal anthropoid species that has started to learn how to make fire, exist together in tribal organizations, but that's about it. 95% of the galaxy doesn't know about human civilization at all. They simply can't know about us. Now let's think about some other amazing statistics. The Milky Way galaxy has been in existence for 13.61 billion years. That's more than 3 times the entire age of the Earth. In the time that the galaxy has been in existence, 3 generations of stars like ours and the planets that orbit them and any civilizations that may have come into existence orbiting these stars have been born and have died, or perhaps moved to other stars that have a longer lifespan. Or perhaps these civilizations came into existence orbiting stars that have a much longer lifespan, like red dwarfs. If that's the case, these civilizations could have come into existence when the galaxy was very young, almost 13 billion years ago, and would have had this much time to develop colossally advanced technology. Now, think about this statistic as well. In a survey of promising-looking star systems, the organization called META, which by the way was spearheaded by Carl Sagan, picked up 8 promising narrowband transmissions. Not a great deal of effort was made to follow up on these transmissions, but 8 signals that looked quite artificial. Now, if all 8 of these signals were valid, that would suggest that there are at least 1 million transmitters capable of sending out high-powered advanced narrowband transmissions in our galaxy. 1 million advanced civilizations. And that's just civilizations that have radio. What about civilizations that could actually manipulate their solar system, manipulate their stars, make their stars into stellar engines capable of crossing the gulf of interstellar space, just in case something happens in their region of space that's a bit dangerous and something that they would like to avoid? What sort of incidents are we talking about here? Well, supernova can be very dangerous, sometimes bathing a solar system as far away as 100 light years in enough radiation to scour every planet in that solar system of all life. And even if the civilization in question had advanced enough technology to protect themselves from that kind of radiation, they might find it far more difficult to protect all the other less advanced creatures on their home planet from that sort of cataclysm. They might just want to get as far away from an event like that as possible. Okay, so all of this is quite interesting, but have we seen any evidence of this sort of thing happening in our galaxy? Stars being relocated to different regions of space by advanced civilizations? Well, yes, but before we get to that, let's talk about an event that's far more dangerous, far more cataclysmic than a supernova. And that may seem a bit difficult to believe, but there is something in the universe that's far more deadly than a supernova, something that can rain death upon an entire solar system from distances of thousands, or in some cases, millions of light years away. And this is the byproduct of an object that we have heard a great deal about, an object that receives tremendous amounts of study from astronomers around the world, and that is a black hole. Now, most people, when they hear about a black hole, think of something that sucks things in, something that devours all matter, all light, anything that is unfortunate enough to come close to it, not something that's going to be dangerous to a star system that's far away. That's actually not the case. Black holes are capable of flinging matter and energy to tremendous distances at unbelievable speeds as well. How is this possible? Black holes just devour things. They suck things in with immense gravity, right? How can they possibly throw things out? Well, there's something called a plasma jet that oftentimes, or at least sometimes, can be the byproduct of an especially massive and powerful black hole. What you're looking at right now is a jet of plasma, a combination of extremely energetic matter and energy spewing out of the supermassive black hole at the center of M87, a colossal supermassive galaxy several million light years away from us. Fortunately, this jet stretches for a distance of at least 5,000 light years, and the plasma within it is traveling at a speed of 99.7% of the speed of light. Anything unfortunate enough to be in the way of this jet, or anything unfortunate enough that orbits into it or crosses into the jet, is instantly fried, instantly annihilated by this immensely powerful plasma, and anything relatively close to the jet is still in a great deal of trouble because it piles enormous amounts of superheated hydrogen, ionized hydrogen by the way, onto any object that happens to be within a few hundred light years of the jet. Any star that's receiving that big of an influx of hydrogen at one time will become highly unstable, sometimes entering into a nova phase prematurely. So any of the planets in the solar system that is in any kind of proximity to this jet is going to find itself being hit with lots of ionized hydrogen, which will probably annihilate any life form on the planet due to all of the radiation involved with something like that. And any of the stars that these planets might be orbiting could find themselves exploding prematurely. Plasma jets are undoubtedly the most dangerous thing in our universe. As a matter of fact, some of them can stretch for millions of light years. One particular plasma jet, recently discovered by an international team of astronomers, emanates from a supermassive galaxy 10 times as huge as ours. Fortunately, it's about 7.5 billion light years away from Earth, but this plasma jet extends for an unbelievable 23 million light years. That's 140 Milky Way galaxies placed end to end. I can't help but wonder how many thousands, if not millions, of intelligent species and their civilizations have been instantly annihilated by this unbelievably powerful and dangerous demon lurking in the farthest reaches of our universe. But why am I talking about all of this? Why is this something that could be considered a threat in our own galaxy? Well, it's because, as we've discussed a number of times in previous episodes on this channel, the Milky Way and Andromeda galaxies are likely to merge about 4 billion years from now. That's hundreds of millions of years before we expect our star to start going through its death throes. And when astronomers talk about the end of the world, they oftentimes talk about how the end of the world will be brought about by the eventual death of the sun. But it might happen significantly before that, because when these galaxies merge, it is very likely that the supermassive black holes at the center of both of these galaxies are also going to merge, with unknown but probably cataclysmic results. Black holes, especially supermassive black holes, have large disks of superheated and excited and oftentimes ionized matter called accretion disks. And when these accretion disks become especially energetic and violent, they can produce these immensely powerful jets of plasma. And that is definitely going to happen when you have two merging supermassive black holes. The accretion disks of these black holes, or rather the enormous black hole that's going to result from the two merging together, is going to be not only immense but also extremely energetic. And when that happens, we can probably expect not only the birth of a new plasma jet coming from this black hole, slicing through the galaxy at a speed of 99.7% of the speed of light, destroying anything that happens to be in its path, but also the emission of an enormous amount of radiation from this new, unstable, and very energetic black hole. Ironically, the accretion disk around this black hole will start to glow with a kind of luminosity that may outshine the entire new galaxy. It's strange that a black hole could create something so bright, but it does, and this is something called a quasar, or rather a galaxy that has a black hole this energetic at its center is called a quasar. And a quasar is not a good place to be. There's so much radiation in a galaxy that has this type of black hole at its center that you just don't want to be anywhere near that galaxy. What if the extremely advanced civilizations in our galaxy, the ones that have been around for millions of years and who can predict astronomical events far better than we can, have already figured out that there is a great cataclysm coming to this galaxy and it's time to move? Is there any evidence of anything like that happening right now? Well, yes, there is, because we've already picked up a number of hypervelocity stars that are on their way out of the galaxy. And even though there are natural explanations as to why these sorts of events are taking place, these natural explanations fall flat in the face of some of the evidence. For example, there's a star system known as WIT-08. The WIT, by the way, standing for What Is This? And this star has something very strange in orbit around it. This object is huge, tens of millions of kilometers across, and it's almost completely opaque, blocking almost all of the starlight that strikes it, and it is also extremely well defined. It can't possibly be a cloud of dust because the edges are very, very exact. It doesn't have fuzzy edges, but rather well-defined edges like a solid object and not like a cloud of dust. And by amazing coincidence, this star is traveling at galactic escape velocity. And if this object has a reflective side facing towards the star in question, it would actually serve as a perfect Skod-off thruster. If you reflect enough of a star's photons shines back onto it, you start to push it in a desired direction. It's not a fast process, and it would take many millions of years for a star powered by a Skodov thruster to cross the gulf between galaxies, but if we're talking about a civilization that is as long-lived as something that could create something like this, a civilization that looks not 100 years ahead or 1,000 years or even a million, but rather billions of years into the future in order to ensure the longevity and survival of their species, then this is the kind of thing that they would build in order to get their home star system out of harm's way. And as I mentioned before, this is not the only example of strange hypervelocity stars with odd characteristics that we have found throughout our galaxy. And there's even more evidence. Studies that have been made of extragalactic starlight, in other words, the stars that are not bound to any particular galaxy but are rather in the space between these galaxies, have revealed something very interesting. Every galactic cluster studied, regardless of age, has roughly the same proportion of extragalactic stars in it. In other words, let's say that 15% of the stars in a galactic cluster are not bound to galaxies but rather in between galaxies. That same percentage exists across the board in almost every galactic cluster, regardless of how old they might be. The actual number is closer to about 17%. Now, if these stars are existing as the result of a natural process, being naturally ejected from their galaxies, and therefore hypervelocity stars with galactic escape velocities are resulting because of natural causes, that means that older galactic clusters should have more extragalactic stars. The older the cluster, the more stars that get ejected from their galaxies, and more the intergalactic population of stars grows. And yet that's not the case. It's 17% across the board, regardless of the age of the cluster. And if this is the result of natural processes, that means that these stars need to be forming outside of their galaxies and not inside. And yet we know for a fact that there are stars being ejected from their galaxy all the time because we've seen it happening. So where are these stars going? Why does the population remain so stable? The only explanation that comes to mind, at least as far as I'm concerned, is that the vast majority of the stars that are getting ejected from a galaxy are finding a new home in another galaxy. And that can't happen because of natural processes. That's happening by design. Stars leaving their galaxy to find a new home because some sort of cataclysm in their own galaxy is forcing them to. And yes, I know that sounds rather far-fetched, but the data seems to support it. So if these stars are escaping our galaxy, if there are these vast stellar engines driving advanced galactic civilizations out of the Milky Way towards a new home, where are they going? Where in our galactic cluster could they possibly go to escape the kind of cataclysm that's going to be represented by the newly formed galaxy Milkomeda? Well, the answer is a smaller spiral galaxy about 2.73 million light years away, home to about 40 billion stars, known as the Triangulum Galaxy, and sometimes known as the Pinwheel Galaxy. And during this cataclysmic collision of the largest galaxies in our cluster, the Triangulum Galaxy is going to stay a very safe distance away and will probably be the safest place in our galactic cluster to hide while all of this is taking place. It would be an interesting study, although no astronomer who wants to keep his or her job would possibly do something like this, but it would be an interesting exercise to see if the hypervelocity stars in our galaxy, plotted based on their speed, acceleration, and other factors, look like that they are on an interception course with the eventual location of the Triangulum Galaxy while this merger is taking place. If we discover that Most or all of the hypervelocity stars that we've detected thus far are indeed heading that way or could head that way sometime in the near future, that would be a dead giveaway. But unfortunately, it would also require a lot of calculations, a lot of observations, and a lot of study that no astronomer is going to invest their time in, because only astronomers who are determined to utterly destroy their credibility forever would possibly embark on this sort of study and actually produce any sort of published study about a topic like this. So, for the moment, it needs to remain a mystery, but at the same time, if we're talking about civilizations millions or perhaps even billions of years more advanced than us, it's a bit of a stretch to expect that we would actually do anything to try to understand them. Thank you very much for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and also please consider supporting this channel on Patreon and PayPal. All the details are in the description. As I'm recording this, I've raised 70% of the funds that I need to attend the IAC convention, the largest aerospace convention on the planet, and I'm getting to attend as a journalist on my own credentials. Quite an amazing thing, which means I get to attend for free. That's the only reason that I think I could try to afford this anyway, but if it's something you would like to support, all the details in the description, as I said before. Thanks again for watching, and as always, stay angry about space.